Hi everyone. Just if someone could let me know in the comments that the sound is coming through clearly, and also, let me know who's watching in the comments too. Say hello. I'd love to hear from you. We are on here a little bit early already, so we'll wait a little bit until 8 o'clock to actually get started. But thank you all for those of you who have joined already, and please just make sure that you allow StreamYard to access your name so I can see who's actually commenting as we go throughout this presentation. And also at the end of this, I'd love to get your feedback on how the live and the group works for you and whether or not you enjoy this process, or if you'd rather it be in a different format next time, possibly in Zoom or something like that. I'd like to get people's feedback on which one works and which one doesn't. Hey, Sharon. Just make sure everyone also has access to the group. Still a few people who are asking to join. Okay, well, hopefully this is working. You guys can hear me. Please let me know if you can't, or let me know if you can. Make sure you leave me a little comment so I know you can hear what I'm talking about. And then we're about to dive into this webinar, going through my 3 secrets for flipped learning. Still have more people coming to join us, so just letting people into the group. Hey, Olivia, thanks for saying hello. Can you hear everything correctly coming through? Yep, great. All right. So let's get started then, and we'll do this together. Please make sure that you're chatting in here as we go. I'll be asking for you to say hello, and hopefully this works really well. I know that there is a slight delay in the live stream between me and you, so hopefully this just still works quite seamlessly, hopefully. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining me for the Flip Learning workshop here. Workshop, it's a webinar, but I wanted to start off by just telling a little bit about my background to Flip Learning and how that all kind of started. So it actually wasn't that long ago that I was in my classroom presenting PowerPoints to my students. I thought I was doing a really good job at the time because I was, saying all the right things and communicating things as clearly as I thought. I thought my students were engaged and really enjoying what I was providing for them. But I also found that I was starting to get frustrated with what was happening in my classroom at the same time, because my students weren't getting the same results that I was expecting them to get. And I still had all the same kind of problems that, a lot of people have as they go through with this. So, my presentations, my students were, what I thought would be a 20-minute presentation basically was taking me 40 minutes because I was constantly having to wait for my students. I had students who were making notes still, and I was slowing down for them. I had other students who were in a hurry to get through the content and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I even had kids who were falling asleep in my class and I had to wake them up. And I thought I was doing a good job at the time, which seems a bit strange at this point in my career to look back and go, I thought I was doing well presenting these kinds of things to my students because I spent so much time in my class talking, and I remember reading some of the research around the amount of time that teachers spend in their classroom talking. And the research was saying that it's about 80% of classroom time is actually the teacher talking and not students talking, which I think is quite testament to what I was doing in my classroom at that time. And so I was constantly just stopping, and it was taking me ages. On top of that, I had all these really cool, fun learning activities that I wanted to do with my students, but I found that I wasn't getting enough time to do them. What was happening was I was spending so much time presenting the content and trying to cover the content or get through the content that it actually meant that I didn't have time to do the fun stuff that I would do with my students. The stuff that I knew was engaging, the stuff that I knew was the practical hands-on type stuff. But I was too busy trying to cover that content to have time to do this. Now, does that sound familiar to you? I mean, it may not be at that point now, but does it sound familiar to something that maybe a place where you were earlier on in your career, or maybe it's where you are now? Let me know in the comments. Just say, yes, this sounds familiar, or just a thumbs up or something like that to let me know that you were like that too. That I'm not alone in this in this this process of where I thought I was at. Yes, yep, good, yep, sure does. Great. So this is definitely something that I think is universal for teachers. I think every teacher, as they often start off by doing these presentations for their students rather than getting to do the fun stuff. Or sometimes it's the other way around. They spend so much time doing the fun stuff and not enough of the teaching, or the teaching, the presenting of content. And so what I found was, one time at school, it was a very simple passing comment that happened at my school. I was just having a very brief chat to my deputy principal. It wasn't even about how my classroom was going, but she mentioned this whole flipped classroom thing where you would take your presentations and send them home so your students could do them as homework, and then you had time in your class to do other activities. And it was literally that much of a comment that I got. It wasn't like she explained flipped learning to me, or I don't even think she was an expert in it herself. She just kind of had heard about it. And so she mentioned it to me. And from that one mention, I just ran with it. I got super excited, and I went for it. And my going for it started off quite basic. Like, I was recording my PowerPoints, and so they had audio on them. And I was telling my students, I was sending them to them through, I think it may have been Moodle or something back then. And my students had to download the PowerPoint and click the present button, right? So that all the timings were there and the audio was in the PowerPoint, and they had to listen to it, take notes, and then enter my classroom with those notes. But I had issues even with that. Like, I remember having these times in my class where students would enter into my classroom and things would not always go perfectly. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we progress. But it was about 3 years later from me starting my flipped learning that I decided that I needed to go all in, and I put up this post on Facebook on one of my pages, which is pdhb.net. Some of you will know me from there. And I put up this post that was basically just me saying, I'm going to flip my classroom and share all the stuff that I make. And so you can see that I had 242 comments on that post. And I ended up flipping my classroom with over 50 other teachers doing the same thing as me. Like, they were using my videos, they were using the booklets I created. I've created a bunch of quizzes, and then they started creating resources as well and sharing it. And it was this amazing experience that I just absolutely loved. I even went on to present at a conference afterwards about the results of doing this flipped process with so many teachers. And I got some feedback from the students and the teachers about the results of this and how it had changed their classroom. And we're going to talk a bit more about how it changed their classroom. But I want to start off by telling you a little bit more about the fact that things did not always look great either. So my flipped learning started off very basic. Like, this is a Prezi, which was my first one that I flipped, a Prezi presentation. And I just went through this Prezi recording my screen the whole way through with my face there up in the top right-hand corner. Quite a simple process, really. It's just screen recording and going through a Prezi that I set up. But then from that kind of early beginning of a basic thing of just using Prezi and screencasting, and you could do a similar thing with PowerPoint and doing screencasting, I then moved on to actually having so many different types of videos now that I use. I've done, PowerTunes, I've done whiteboards. So you can see this up here. This is a PowerTune. This is a whiteboard. I've done some basic video aspects with me just talking and doing some video editing to put other images into my video. I've done interviews over here with other teachers. I've done more screencasting here where I'm just walking through a Word document essentially there. I've used green screens here, and this is my son, Charlie, and I remember doing this video with him for one of his groups that he's part of, and we created this cool little green screen video, and at the end of it, I actually got eaten by a dinosaur, which was really cool. And I've done these call-outs once. So I've actually now done a big variety of different types of videos for flipping and really progressed a long way, but it did not start there, right? It did not start there. And as I've been going through this, I've been doing this now, I've been flipping for over 10 years now in my classroom, and I've really enjoyed the benefits that have come from flipping throughout this journey that I've kind of had. And so just some of the benefits that come with flipping your classroom. Number one, you get increased engagement, right? When I did that flip with everyone and I surveyed people, these are some of the things that came out of the survey, is that the students were more engaged. They were more focused on their learning in the class time, as well as by engaging with videos and stuff. The teachers reported that they had a better knowledge and a better understanding of their students. So, and this is the same things that I was finding as well. I had this greater knowledge of not only who they were as a person, but also how they were going with their learning. I was constantly getting a lot more formative assessment done. I was constantly seeing where they were because I had more time with each of my students, both individually and in small groups. I wasn't constantly trying to engage with them as a large group. I also had decreased lesson disruption, and I started to really enjoy what I was doing in my classroom because I started to have time for my fun teaching lessons, and I was enjoying teaching again. And students were enjoying learning. Like that, students report they enjoy learning better in this kind of a process because of the changes that we can make in our classroom. Students were learning more. They were becoming more independent in their learning. So much more. I was even getting better results in my tests and stuff, which is not my main goal, to be honest. With my teaching, my main goal is to actually develop my students and prepare them for life and help them to develop the skills of learning. But as a side bonus, they also increased their results by doing this process. And I think that is absolutely amazing. And I want to know, is this something that you really want? Is this the kind of changes that you want to see in your classroom where you've got increased engagement, you know your students better, you've got less disruption to your lesson, and you're actually enjoying teaching again? Let me know just now, just chat, dump something in the comments, let me know, is this something you want? And if so, which one do you particularly want to see change in your classroom? Do you particularly want to have less, lesson disruption, less behavior issues? Do you want to have more increased lesson engagement? Do you want to have that better relationship with your students? Let me know which one of those is the thing that you really want to have increase in your classroom, or maybe decrease if it's disruption. All right, so Olivia says she wants to see more fluid lessons and less disruption for sure. I think definitely less disruption. There's a Facebook user who says that they want to have better knowledge of their students, which I think is a huge one for me. Increased engagement for sure, definitely is fantastic. So this is it. This is the kind of stuff that we want, right? This is the stuff that we want to have change in our classrooms. And I'm going to tell you that flipping your classroom is one of the best things. It's definitely the best thing I've ever done in my classroom. And I think it's one of the best things to do for transforming your classroom, to be able to get these benefits from what you're doing in your classroom. and it can actually become quite easy. Now, I'm going to go through my 3 secrets of flipped learning throughout this webinar. So my 3 secrets I'm going to cover today. One is it will go wrong. Okay, that's the first secret. Okay, often people think, if I flip my classroom, everything's going to work perfectly, or they expect it's going to fix everything 100%. And I'm going to tell you it's not going to fix everything 100%. Okay, but it is going to improve things. Okay, number 2 is that you need to be flexible by design as you go about your teaching using the flipped learning approach. And there are things within flipped learning that will really help you to be flexible in your design and in your lessons and stuff that you do. And then the third one is to create the fun. And I'm actually going to talk you through a bit of a process that helps you to come up with more engaging and create the fun lessons that you really want to create. Because at the end of the day, we really want our students to engage in their learning. We want them to benefit from their learning. And we want them to come away from our lessons remembering it, right? And by creating things that are fun and engaging, that actually helps create memorable moments for our students where they are engaged in what we're doing, learning the content, applying the content, and just the hands-on stuff and the physical movements. There's so much that we can do here. And we're going to walk through each one of these 3 secrets in a bit of detail tonight. There'll be time at the end for Q&A and stuff as well. And hopefully I will help you to get stuck into this process. So the secret number 1 was, it doesn't always go to plan. When we flip our classroom, we need to remember that we're not always going to get it right. Remember how I was saying when I first started flipping my classroom, I was recording the PowerPoints and the kids had to click the present and take their notes. And then they would come into my classroom, and as they entered, I would check their notes. And then if the student hadn't done it, if the student hadn't done that when I was originally starting, I would then tell them, okay, you have a detention, right, with me. They had to come back and sit in my classroom during the next break, so recess or lunch, to go through and take their notes. But then I would, in my classroom, just teach my lesson as if everyone had watched it, as if everyone had done the work. And so my students who hadn't done it were then struggling the whole way through the lesson because they hadn't done the content, and I wasn't letting them go and do the content. They had to wait until their detention to do that. And so they were getting frustrated in my classroom from that. And then they had to come and do detention, and they were frustrated by their detentions from that. And I was getting it wrong, right? I was very clearly not doing things the way I should have done. And what I should have been doing is, the kids who hadn't done it, the first thing they do is sit at the back and get that done. And then I have lessons planned, and I plan for the fact that kids aren't all going to get it right? They're not all going to do all the homework. Okay. We need to know that, these frustrations are normal. Flipping your classroom, your students are not suddenly going to do all their homework, right? There's always been kids who never did their homework, and there will always be kids who don't do their homework. And so we just plan for that. What we're doing with flipped learning, though, is making it so that if they don't do their homework, it's actually less impactful on their learning, because they can come in, they can sit at the back of my classroom, put their earphones in, go through the presentation, take their notes, and then join the lesson still, right? Whereas in a normal classroom, they would have only gotten the presentation and done a little bit of other application in my class, and then the higher order thinking ends up going home or being done at later times, and the students really struggle with that because they don't have the help, right, that they need during that process. So I think once I even managed to send my students the complete wrong link, right? So I had done this beautiful video or whatever it was, and I'd shared it in the classroom and put the link, but the link was to the wrong video. And my students came into the class going, what was that video? Why were we watching that? And it wasn't until that lesson that I'm like, oh, I stuffed it up. Like, I've clearly given you the wrong thing. And I had to then adapt what I was doing in my lesson, which leads me to that second secret, right? It's when things are going to be wrong. And so we need to be flexible by design. We need to be planning our flexibility in our lessons and be thinking about how things are actually not going to work all the time. So this could just be as simple as, 2 students not watching the video before they come to class. It could be as bad as sending the wrong link, or it could be as bad as just going on with your lesson without checking whether or not the students have learned anything, and they're trying to apply stuff or anything like that, and they can't do it because they haven't actually done any of the other work. And so it's super important that we ourselves as teachers design flexibility into our lessons, right? And I would say that this is important for any process that we do, but when it comes to flipped learning, there's actually a few things that are going to help us with this. So when you enter the classroom, I want you to think of the fact that you should design this flexibility. You want what you are going to do with your students. You need to think through, what am I going to do with them? Who's not going to watch the video, right? If they don't watch the video, what am I doing with those students? And so I need to plan. If they haven't watched it, they're going to sit at the back, they're going to watch it. That might mean I need to book some computers so they can do that, or I need to make sure there's earphones for them so that they're not going to tell me that they don't have their earphones when really, particularly if they're senior students, they're all going to have earphones. They just don't tell you that they do or anything like that. Just get rid of those excuses, right? Or what are you going to do with the one who watches but doesn't understand the video? So they've watched it, they come into your class, but they're still clueless about what they've watched. What are you going to do if you send the wrong link? Or what are you going to do if you have to go back to the beginning of your lesson because no one understood what was in the video because it was such a bad video? What would you do if they come all prepared? Maybe they've got it all right. Maybe they've all watched the video, they've understood it, and then you got this awesome lesson plan, but they smash it in 20 minutes. And then you're like, all right, well, now what do I do? You've got to prepare for each of those situations to think about how you can differentiate your classroom, how you can really adapt what you're doing, and have those other plans for when things go wrong, right? We've always had those lessons, right, where you probably wanted to show a video to your whole class and just technology hasn't worked for you, right? You spent 20 minutes trying to get the video working, someone's pressed some button and nothing's working now. And we have to be flexible. And I think people begin to forget that as they go into flipped learning. They think that because the kids have watched the videos, right, when they come into the lesson, things aren't going to go as wrong, right? But things will still go wrong, and we need to be flexible to adapt to that. But we also need to be flexible in our differentiation for that. And so making sure that we actually plan differentiation into our lessons and go, okay, so the 2 kids who don't watch the video, they're sitting at the back. The 4 kids who watched it but didn't quite understand it, I'm going to do a little mini lesson for them, which means the kids who really smashed it, they need an activity they can do without me. And so I'm going to plan and devise that, give the instructions, and hand that over to my students to get stuck into it. And so straight away we can differentiate. And there's really cool tech tools that are going to help us with that. So technology such as Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is a fantastic tool that will allow you to basically take any like YouTube video or Khan's Academy video or really anything on the internet, even your own videos. You can upload your own videos and you put it into their system, and you can then make the video stop at any point in time and have it ask them a question. That could be multiple choice. They could have to write the answer before they can keep watching the rest of the video. And then it gives you these results. Excuse me. It gives you these results where you can, before class, open up Edpuzzle and have a look and see which kids watched the video. It tells you how much of the video they watched. It tells you how many of the questions they got right. You can ask them to leave comments. You can leave them audio comments and stuff, but straight away you get to see who's watched it and if they got the questions right before you get into class. So already you can tell who needs to go and sit at the back because they haven't watched the video. You can tell who watched it and didn't understand it and who needs to be retaught, and the kids who did watch it and understood it and what they need to do. And you can even see with Edpuzzle, this is another really cool bit, it'll even tell you how often the kids watched or how many times the students watched particular parts. So they may have watched, maybe they got the question wrong, but they watched the section beforehand 5 times and still got that question wrong. And so that might actually mean that the question was a bit hard, or they've really missed something in that section of the video. And so you can then help them with that. There's other things you can use as well. If you don't want to use Edpuzzle, Google Forms are really good for putting videos and having the students actually type in summaries of the video. You can use, this is something I've started using a bit more, is I use questions that really direct them to pulling out the main content and writing answers that they can use as a summary. And then I use Google Forms to then send them an email of their answers. So they actually get an email of their summaries that they can easily copy and paste into something for themselves. And it also gives me the insight that I need before I come back and still see, have they watched it? Did they answer the questions? Did they get them right? And then what do I need to do going into my lesson? Other cool things to use in a flipped learning classroom, just stuff that can help make things fun. So things like Flipgrid, Kahoot, and Padlet are great tools to use for students to be doing things on their own, or for them to be giving each other feedback and doing discussions and stuff. So much that it becomes very useful that you have a bit more time for in your class, because flipped learning, one of the big things it's going to do is give you back the time in your class so that you can actually plan for really great, engaging lessons, but also means that you get to sit around with your students. You get to actually spend that one-on-one time with them throughout the lesson to check in on them, to see what they've learnt, to see how they're going and progressing. You can ask them questions. You can give them the support that they need or the direction that they need at the time when they need it. And you're there to help them with the higher order thinking skills, because flipping your classroom is all about taking the lower order content. So you're just if you think of Bloom's taxonomy, all the stuff at the bottom, so that understanding and the knowledge type, comprehension stuff that's at the bottom, that is the stuff that you're flipping. That's the stuff you're going to put into videos or presentations or have them read, because flipping doesn't have to be a video. It's most often a video, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be text that the students read. It can be something they listen to, etc. It doesn't even have to be content. It can be a stimulus even that they watch. So you could have students watch a snippet of a video of a movie before they come for discussion, and you can actually ask some questions that lead into that discussion to prep them for the debate they're going to have or something in class based on what they've watched. So you have to actually watch it in class. You can actually have that engagement built into what you're doing. But nothing really is going to beat your good preparation and making sure that as a flip teacher, as you're coming into your classroom, that you are flexible enough and that you've planned and thought through different things that might happen in your classroom based on flipped learning. So our last secret, and probably the best one, I think, is to create the fun, right? The biggest question that flipped learning is about. So flipped learning always asks a question: what is the best use of classroom time? And its argument is that the best use is not you standing at the front giving a presentation. Okay, and that's, I think we all agree with that. I think most of you can tell you, I think most of you really understand that creating fun and engaging lessons is not just about presenting, right? It's about creating active learning, whether that's, I mean, we do talk about hands-on learning, but I want to talk about it's minds-on learning. It's about having an active brain in the learning process, not a brain that's just sitting there absorbing stuff, right? I want them to start actually creating stuff and doing stuff with their brain rather than being passive in their learning. And so I'm going to walk you through a few questions that are really designed to help you to create stuff. Because if you're anything like me, right, and I want you to tell me in the comments if this is the kind of thing that you say to yourself, right? I know I used to say it to myself all the time, say I'm not the creative type, right? I don't have any hobbies, right? I don't paint, I don't sew, I don't draw, I don't design anything, I don't design buildings or anything like that. Creativity doesn't come naturally to me, right? If I go to an art gallery, normally I'm a bit bored, right? It's not something that engages me or interests me, but I know it's engages some people. But if you've ever thought this about yourself, I'm not the creative type, leave me a comment. Let me know that that's something that you have thought about and that you have actually said to yourself, right? I want to know I'm not the only person, the only teacher who's gone, I'm not creative. I don't come up with creative ideas, right? I'm not the creative person, right? The art teacher, the English teacher is who I think of when I think of creative. And often I think of primary school teachers as well, because they've often got to be creative in what they're doing. But I think it's not me. Am I? Yeah, okay. Someone else is good. Great. I'm not alone. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Sharon. I always have this thing, I feel like I'm not creative, but I've found that it actually doesn't come naturally to anyone really, because what I've learned is that it really, anyone who's creative, I talk to these creative people and they're like, no, I actually have, like, they have processes that they use. They're disciplined in how they go about being creative, how they go about actually helping and doing this stuff for their classrooms. And I had the joy of reading a book recently, which is Teach Like a Pirate. It's a fantastic book by Dave Burgess, very big on the idea of teachers being creative. And so how do we actually go about increasing our creativity when it comes to our classroom, right? That's what we're going to talk about now. And I'm going to say that we ask and we assess and we analyze, right? We are trying to look at our lessons. We're going to assess them. We're going to analyze our lessons, though, our ideas that we come up with, and we're going to ask questions about our lessons and what we can do to improve this. Because I want at your lessons, right, what I would love at the end of my lessons for my students to leave going, that was amazing, right? Not because I'm amazing, but just because what they did was amazing, right? What they engaged with, the activities that they were doing in my classroom really engaged them and they had fun while they were learning. And I think, one of the worst things we can do for our students is have a boring lesson, right? So you don't just want to flip your lesson, have videos at home, come in and do worksheets, right? That's not what you really want to do. I'm not saying you can't do worksheets at all, but you want to really have things set up so that the students are engaged and that you're having fun as a teacher, right? You want to create the lessons that you as a teacher want to go and deliver, right? You want to go and facilitate this awesome lesson. And so we're going to ask questions, right? We're going to ask questions such as, how many different ways can I take this lesson outside? And so I want you to take a moment. I want you to think about a lesson that you taught today, maybe. Think about the content that you were delivering, the topic, and think about how could you have changed the environment for this lesson. I want you to come up with multiple ways that you could change it. So, it could just be by rearranging the tables and stuff. Maybe there was a better thing that you could do with your tables. Maybe you could have turned them into forts or something. Maybe you could have put them into groups for their discussions and had your tables collaborated, like cafe style type tables. Maybe you could have gotten rid of your tables completely and put them all against the wall and stacked them up and had kids sitting on the floor. Maybe you could have taken the kids into an auditorium, into a computer lab, into the library. Maybe you could have taken them outside into the big auditorium at your school. There's so many different environments that we can actually teach in. And one of the things that we should be asking ourselves is this environment, is my classroom actually the best environment for teaching this? And if not, can I get my class to another one, right? To a better context for the learning that they're doing. So how many different ways can you take this lesson? It doesn't have to be outside, but how many different ways can you change the environment, right? And the key to these questions, and notice as we go, is that we're not just asking, can I, right? We're looking for how many. We're looking at coming up with multiple ideas, because some of the ideas you come up with are not going to be great, okay? But some of them will be. Some of them are going to be fantastic. And so what you want to do is try and come up with as many as you can and then identify it. Because what happens, they teach you in marketing and in media and stuff that when you're trying to come up with your headline, you actually want to come up with about 50 headlines, because it's not until after your 30th that you start to create really good ones. And that, I think, is really important. It's really important for us to know that as we're planning these lessons, right? And that's part of the reason why I know that, the beginning of a flip journey and even an experienced flipper is still going to get things wrong, right? Because we're going to be trying something and it's not going to work. But we need to come up with more ideas. We need to be really thinking through how we can do this. And so one way is to think about our environment. And as we go through this, I would love for you to just put in the chat any ideas that you actually come up with for where you might like to actually go. And I see here a comment that says that they feel creative when it is a topic that they like. And I want to challenge you too, that you want to also be creative when you're doing a topic that you don't like, because it's probably the topics you don't like that need you to become more creative. It's when you need to actually create, because they're the topics that you're not naturally going to be as enthusiastic and passionate about. And so you need to allow your passion for education, right, for learning and for helping your students become really great learners, that passion for changing students' lives and for educating them so that they are prepped and have a better future for themselves, that kind of passion should steer you to being even more creative and trying these kind of questions even more as you're getting towards that. But if you come up with great ideas, chuck them in the chat for everyone else to see as well. It doesn't have to be, you have to be specific about what lesson it's for, but just put a comment in there like, I would have loved to have gone outside today, or maybe you realized that you could have, cooked some food or something in a food lab, and that would have made your lesson even more exciting. And so you just put in there, I could have gone to a food lab or something like that. That'd be great to share those kind of ideas today in there, so that we all benefit from each other's expertise. The next question is, can I introduce some sort of physical activity to this lesson? And in how many different ways can I do this, right? Because we're not just looking at one, right? So how many different ways can you think of where you could actually get your students of being active today? So thinking again back through your lessons today, how could you have made your lesson have some kind of physical activity in it? I remember a lesson where I was getting my students to read something, and I decided that lesson that rather than have them sit down at their desk to read, I actually made them all stand up and walk around the room as they were reading, and they had to navigate each other and make sure they didn't run into each other and stuff. And I was doing that partly from a PE perspective of getting them moving and not sitting down all day, but it was something different. The kids will remember that. They still remember the reading that they did, even though they were making sure they didn't run into each other. But that kind of a change to your lesson, as simple as it is, made it more engaging, more fun. If you're teaching PDHPE, it's normally quite easy to get them out and do some kind of prac, maybe because you've got that extra bit of time. But there's other ways too. So just think through other kinds of physical movements that you could have incorporated into your lesson. Sometimes I've seen kids that juggle sandbags back and forth with a rhythm to help them with their times tables and that kind of stuff. I've seen kids who have gotten crafty and knitted something, or they've had to move around in your debates, right? When you have your signs up on your walls about different opinions on things, and the kids move around from side to side in the classroom based on their opinions, and they voice things about that. And so you're getting your students up and moving in some way to change and improve the creativity and the engagement throughout that lesson. The next question that you could ask is, in how many ways can I use music to improve this lesson? It can be as simple as, maybe you want to actually play music as your students enter the room, right? You could use some kind of theme song. It could be, I like Star Wars, so I might use the Star Wars theme song, or the Star Wars music that's playing as Darth Vader walks out as my students enter the room, right? And it would get this sense of curiosity going in my students about what they're learning that day. And I would try and connect the music that I use to the lesson. Or maybe I might just use the music to get them excited about what's doing, and for them to understand that they're no longer just moving around between classes, right? Particularly in high school, students are changing periods all the time, or they're coming back from recess. The music can actually indicate to them, we're changing the environment. We're going into a classroom now. Or maybe you're going to play music throughout your whole lesson, and you're going to have some background classical music in there to just be some kind of white noise, because maybe you're in a classroom where the classrooms around you are really noisy, and you want to kind of block that out to help your students to focus. Lots of different ways you can use music. You could bring in instruments even and have your students play things if it connects to your learning, or have them just look at things that might be older or culturally significant types of instruments that might connect to your lesson. And so we're just constantly thinking about these kinds of questions and coming up with as many ideas as we can going through this. And so, you just keep going through. I mean, I can see here we have people saying rhymes and raps. We played relaxing music as students enter the classroom, right? This is the kind of stuff that we just chuck in the chat. It's great to share this kind of stuff as we're going. The next question is, could I bring a dramatic performance or two to this lesson, right? So again, thinking through how else you could do things, right? Maybe when you're studying some kind of historical actions and stuff, maybe you could decide to do some kind of reenactment of an aspect that is really important for the students to understand. And so you might get the kids to act it out, or maybe you'll organize a couple of teachers to act it out for the students. Maybe you'll organize an impromptu thing. Maybe you'll plan with a few of your class clowns maybe that they're going to be two characters, right? You have one student that's one character, one class clown that's another character, and you're going to be another one. And you're just going to start it randomly in the class, and it's just going to like kind of like a flash mob type thing, but with drama, right? Or you can even do a flash mob dance if it's something that connects into your lesson, right? So thinking through these kinds of things is really important for coming up with creative and fun lessons that our students can engage in. Another question could be, how can I bring more energy and enthusiasm to this lesson, right? So us as teachers really need to be the #1 source of energy and enthusiasm in your classroom, right? If you are in your classroom and you are not energetic, if you are not excited to be there, your students will take that energy and replicate it. Okay, if you are bored and dismal and tired, then that is what is going to come out of your students. I remember a lesson that I gave where I watched my students come in and they looked miserable, right? It was just after lunch. They were all walking in with their heads down, plodding over to their desk, putting stuff down, and hardly making eye contact with each other. And the first thing that I did was just go, "This is crazy, guys, get up." I put on some music and I forced them all to dance, right? I told them that at the very least, they had to step from side to side and clap their hands with the rhythm, right? And I had a couple of kids who started just like breaking out in dance because they loved to dance. I had some kids that just stood there going side to side and clapping, but all of them, by the end of 30 seconds, were looking so much more happy and energetic and ready to engage in what we were going to be doing that lesson than they did beforehand. And something that simple can really change your lessons and bring in a bit more enthusiasm from your students, right? And if they're got a bit more energy, you don't want to hype them up, right? I'm not saying you should get them crazy and psycho and then try and get them to focus on something, but get them to a point where they're actually ready and to engage in learning, because there's nothing worse than having a bored student in your class. It's going to lead to a lot of disruption. And so you now have this time back in your class to be doing these kinds of lessons. So bring that energy to your lessons and make sure that your students then bring that energy as well. Another question, how many different costumes or props could you use to enhance your lesson, right? If you're going to do history, or maybe you're studying a novel or something, pull out a character, dress up as them, pretend to be them, right? As you're delivering part of the story, or as you're engaging with your students and walking around, have them ask you questions like you're that character to help them with what they're doing. Or maybe there's props you could bring in. Maybe there's something that you've gotten, if you teach a history, for example, maybe you've bought something from a museum that you could actually have go around your class, or you've got enough of them that you could put one on tables of 5 students or something, and the students can actually have something physical in front of them to engage with and to learn from, and that hooks them in a bit more, because this is a hands-on practical thing. It's a physical thing in front of them, and that's linking into what they're learning throughout. And our final question is, how many different ways could I have students connect this content with the real world, right? With their lives, with their context. So brainstorm that, right? And come up with as many ways as you can. And it might be that you want to plan an excursion. Maybe you're going to take them out of your lesson. You're going to connect the very first question about the environments with this one and go, you know what? Let's connect with their real context and take them into somewhere else. So there's a lesson I teach that's on our aging population, and one of the things I really like to do with my students for that lesson is take them to an aged care facility where they feed the elderly at that aged care facility who need to be fed. And the students, they get so much more out of that by seeing and engaging with some of the issues that exist around our growing and aging population. And so that's a real world connection, making that learning authentic, or maybe just connecting it with their grandparents, or having grandparents come in for the day and do that lesson with their students. Kind of like a grandparents' day that they do for primary school. Organize one for your class when you're looking at that something. How can you actually bring in, it's not just about, you can make these connections, but how can you make these connections more real even? How can you bring people in to connect this to their lives, to their context, to the real world around them? And sometimes that's really simple. Sometimes it really takes a lot of thinking for you to be able to work out how this connects, because sometimes what our governments decide need to be included in the content isn't actually that applicable to our students, but we need to find the ways that it is. Okay, how can we actually shift the perspective on a topic so that suddenly it's way more interesting and important for them, right? It can be a very simple shift that needs to happen, but it can make a really big change for your students if you can shift their perspective on the content that you're showing them. So if you're teaching them about, voting and the whole voting system, if you shift their perspective into the importance of, freedom and the importance of choice and the importance of our rights and all those kinds of things into that as well, you're shifting their perspective on it, and that will help them to then find more engaging things about it, and it helps you to then draw in the connections as well and make those really explicit for your students. Okay, well, I want to just jump back into the chat and see what people have got here. I've got quite a few here. Some people have, people have got having the respiratory and heart coned out in the hall. Students have red bibs. Yep. Oh, great. Yeah. Oxygenated stuff moving around. Another one, I really agree that the environment is a big influencer. Right. These are really good comments that people are making and sharing here in this group. And I love that people are commenting in there. And I'd encourage you to continue to comment as we continue to work our way through. So they are our 3 secrets. Okay, the 3 secrets that I wanted to share today. One is, don't expect it to all be perfect. Okay, things will go wrong, and people always object to doing something new as well by saying, but what if they don't do this? What if they don't do that? Right? What if my students don't watch it? What if they don't have access to internet and videos? What if they don't, what if they come and they're not engaged and not doing stuff? And we need to, as teachers, be coming up with this process that really helps to shift them in that direction where we know it's going to be wrong. And so we start to become more flexible. And so that's why number 2 is to be flexible by design, for us to actually plan in flexibility to what we're doing and to answer those questions of, if this goes wrong, what am I going to do? If this goes wrong, what am I going to do? And also, if everything goes right, what am I going to do? Or if everything goes too good, what if I'm quite slightly under prepped because my students are so loving it and so engaged? How can I make this all work? And we need to do this anyway, right? If anything goes wrong, maybe you've double booked something and there's 3 classes going to the library that day and you can't go in there. What are you going to do to back that up if that can't work for you? And I think number 3 is going to help you with that too. If you're trying to design your flexibility, you start to think about how you can create really fun and engaging lessons. And by doing those lots of things, right? We're not just saying, can I, right? Or, is it possible to do this? We're saying, how many ways can I do this? How many ways can I change my environment? How many ways can I connect with the real world? How many ways can I bring in drama? Can I bring in music? How many ways can I get them being physical and moving? How many ways can I bring in props? And that means that if something goes wrong, maybe you've got another backup in your big list of brainstorm ideas that you came up with as you were doing this. All right. Can I offer you something around flipped learning? Right. So I do want you to answer this, right? Can I just make an offer to you about an upcoming workshop that I have of focusing on flipped learning? Just quickly say yes if you would like me to do that for you. I promise I won't harp on about it for the next half an hour. Just want to spend maybe 2 minutes telling you about this offer that I've got for you guys. Beautiful. I've got some yeses coming in, so I'll get into it so I don't take too long. So I have coming up on the 31st of May, my flipped learning workshop, which is being held just outside of Sydney in the Blue Mountains. Now, as part of my workshops, I have decided, because so often people come to a workshop and they learn stuff and they get excited. And I remember doing this myself, going to conferences and stuff, and I'd learn all this cool stuff. Then I'd go back to my classrooms and I'd start implementing it, and I'd hit some struggles, things would go wrong, and then I might give up on it, or I didn't have anyone who could really help me as I kept going. And so I'm specifically making sure now that when I create workshops, that they're not just a one-day thing. You only need to do the one-day thing to get your NESA accredited hours and that kind of stuff. But I also now build in support that goes with it to really make sure teachers are successful and are getting the help that they need when they need it, right? So my flipped learning workshop, right? One of the best ways to learn about flipped learning is to kind of flip. And so I give you, as part of this workshop, access to my Introduction to Flipped Learning online course, which runs you through all the basics of flipped learning. It'll talk to you about how to use some of the technology that you might want to use. Like there's videos in there about how to use Edpuzzle. There's videos in there about how to use Screencastify and to screencast your computer screen and make a video out of that. And there's also videos about what you should do in your classroom and that kind of stuff. I also give you the bonus course of HyperDocs, which again is an online course. Now the HyperDocs course I give to you because HyperDocs, as you go through your flipped learning journey, I found HyperDocs very helpful as I got to go into a flipped mastery approach, which is basically when students are allowed to progress at their own rate. Those students who smash through everything and do a really good job. HyperDocs really help with those students. You're essentially giving them a student lesson plan, right? So you create your lesson plan, but then you just rewrite it for students and give it to them with the links and everything and their choices built into it. And it's a fantastic tool that you can use when you're flipping, particularly if you're going to do like flipped learning and project-based learning, or flipped learning and projects at all in any kind of sense, or if you're going to allow students to continue to progress at their own kind of pace. The other thing I do is I do 3 live online support meetups that come after the workshop. So I run my workshop, and then a couple of weeks later, I'll run a live meetup Q&A type thing where I provide further support for people who would like it. And I do 3 of these spaced out across a term or maybe a bit over a term, so that I can actually provide you with the support and help you, because like I said, things will go wrong and you're going to want someone to shoot questions to and all that kind of stuff. And so I want to provide that. I want to be able to help you as you do this. And I remember when I did this with the 50 teachers that I spoke about before, I ran monthly kind of online meetings to help them and teach them things about what they can be doing in their classroom and how flipped learning works and all that kind of stuff. And of course, as everyone does, as they come to my workshops, you'll get my awesome drink bottle, which just comes with any workshop that I have. But this is what I put together so that people who come to this workshop really get all the support that they need. It's happening on the 31st of May, which means that this week is actually the last week that you can register for this workshop. Now, in total, what's provided for you here is about over $1,000 worth of value in what's up there, but it's only $385 for the workshop. That includes the GST. It's $350 without GST for you to come along to that. So please, I would love to see you guys come and join me there. Please submit forms to your exec and stuff if you need to have them book you in for this course. I actually know some of you who are here today are already booked into that course, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there. But that's it for the kind of sharing of what I'm doing there. Now what I want to do is actually just get some questions from you guys. Tell me what's holding you back, or just any questions that you have about flipped learning. Chuck them into the chat and I'll do my best to make sure that I answer them for you now. Yeah, Kelly, I'll definitely make sure that I run another workshop for flipped learning soon. And shoot me an email, Kelly, too, if you like, and I can send you the link where you can at least get stuck into the introductory course. And I'll give you a discount for that if you like. So if you're interested in doing the online course only, shoot me an email and I'll send you a discount code so that you can purchase just access to that single course that introduces you to flipped learning, all the stuff to get you started at least. Does anyone have any questions? Chuck them into the chat there and I'll run through and answer them. Well, tell me what's actually holding you back. What makes you hesitant to try flipped learning? No worries, Ingrid. You shoot me an email and I'll send you a code for you to get into doing that course. Well, what's an alternative to YouTube? Depends on what you mean, Sharon. So if you're looking for hosting, somewhere to host a video, Google Drive can host your videos, or you could try places like Vimeo if you're looking for somewhere that holds a lot of video content. The Khan Academy holds a whole bunch of videos that are often linked into specific subjects and stuff like that. And then other than that, you can try things like, I know sometimes you can find workarounds like by embedding it into another website, but I think that only works about 50% of the time, I think. So your best option might actually be to email your admin person and ask for specific videos that you want to be opened up so that everyone can access it. Particularly, that's particularly easy if you're at a private school. If you're at the DET, I'm not entirely sure, but you want to send an email to whoever you can to get things off. Does Zoom work for a lot of the media you describe? Yeah, look, Zoom is really good. Zoom is good for creating videos. It does screencasting, and you don't need anyone else in the video. You can just literally launch a meeting, share your screen, and it'll create a video for you. That's definitely something that you can do for screencasting, or even for creating just a video of yourself. Right? It can be as simple as even just turning on your own phone and doing a little video as you talk to them. Yeah, the lack of exec support is definitely frustrating in a lot of places, and that's often driven even by your school community and parental expectations or perceived expectations. But I find one of the key things that we do, and I talk about this in the course as well, is how to get buy-in for flipped learning. And so one of the processes you want to do is actually talk to people about what flipped learning is and how it's going to help what happens in your classroom so that there's better learning happening in your classroom. And it's not about not presenting and not teaching, but it's actually about taking the lower order thinking skills and having that done in the individual space. You can even do a thing called in-flipping, where the students have their own device basically, and they watch the video in class and then do the activity straight afterwards, because you'll still have less disruption to your lesson. Your 40-minute presentation will go down to 15 to 20 at max, right? In terms of how long it takes for students to watch and engage with it. And then you can still have more time. It won't be as much as if you send the videos home, but you'll still have more time in class to do other activities. And with Edpuzzle and stuff, you can still watch your students as they watch the video, and you can see how they're progressing and which questions they're getting right and wrong and all that kind of stuff. So you want to try and get some buy-in in that sense, and also try and try it without the support, unless they're going to tell you that you definitely can't do it, and that if you don't go back to not doing it, that they're going to fire you. You want to be asking questions like, can I do this? And then if I do this and they're not going to support me about it, what are the consequences of that? Because there may not actually be any consequence that they can give you for trying flipped learning and doing something slightly different. And I tend to find that if you try it for a while and you're starting to get results, that's when they start to get when they actually get buy-in, because they'll come and go, hey, your students are reporting that they're enjoying lessons, or they're hearing that your students are doing better in the exams and stuff, even because of this. Jessica, do I write a script when creating the videos? And the answer is yes and no. So it depends on what kind of video I'm making. If I'm doing like a presentation like this and I don't have a PowerPoint, I will normally create some kind of PowerPoint that just has my dot points on it. It's not a scripted PowerPoint, but it's just got dot points that remind me of the key things I want to say as I go through the presentation. You probably already have PowerPoints that you present from. You can easily just present from those. You can, we often as teachers we are all presenters, we're all kind of keynote speakers and present to people every day, right? So we're used to presenting. So you're doing the same thing, but now you're doing it to a camera. So you don't have to script it. You can dot point it. You can do it without anything. I've done videos without anything, but then I've also had other ones where I've completely scripted it, particularly when I'm making things like one of my Powtoons or those whiteboard animation things. I will script those ones completely and read through them because you're not seeing my face and all that kind of stuff. I can read engagingly, but often if you're doing a face video, you want to be looking at the camera and having a bit more of a natural conversation with what's happening. All right, next question says, how ahead were you on your videos, clips, etc.? I know it's great once you've got them done, but to start, I can imagine the time consuming. Yeah, Rebecca, when you start creating your videos, I actually create them in batches. So I would create maybe 4 or 5 videos at once. So just create one big kind of PowerPoint slide thing and go through, record one big long video and then cut it into 5 smaller videos, which would cover 5 weeks. And so I tend to be ahead by about 4 or 5 weeks. And then after 3 weeks, I'd probably batch the next lot and record those. So it's really a lot easier if you do it that way. And then you are correct too in saying that once you have them set up, it then actually saves you so much time going forward because you've always got this bank of videos that you've created. And so like for me now, when I teach stage 6 PDHPE, I have so many videos I've already made on that content. I can easily just pick them and send them to my students and they're done. I did them 3 or 4 years ago and the syllabus hasn't changed since and the content hasn't changed too much since either. And so I can keep sending that to my students and I don't have to constantly recreate them if I've done a decent job of them. If I do need to go and look at them and go, did my students really struggle with something in this one, and I can change it and update it. But that's what we're doing. And so, yeah, it saves you a lot of time in the future for sure, flipping, massive time savers. But then if you batch your creation of videos, it saves you a lot of time. The other way you can save time too is by finding videos that other people have had. So you don't have to create all of your own videos. In fact, they don't even all have to be videos. Okay, you could send home, like I started by sending home PowerPoints that they were recorded, but it was just a PowerPoint. They could have just read the PowerPoint. I had the teacher's notes or the presenter notes were in that, and I was just reading them, and so they could easily just read through them themselves. And it's possible you've got stuff that students are reading. You can get them to read that at home before they come, and there's other things too, like insert learning, where if they're reading it on a website, you can embed questions and stuff for them to answer as they go through the website and do those readings as well. So that's really a great question, but I would batch my recordings. I would outsource some of my videos as well and pull them from other people. In fact, if you have multiple people teaching the same content at your school, which definitely the larger schools have, if you could pair up with someone to do the videos, that'll also save you stuff, and you can work together on creating a whole term's worth of videos between the two of you, only being half the number of videos. Really saves you a lot of time there as well. Anyone got any other questions at all that they'd like to ask or want to share? What else is holding them back from being able to flip their classroom? Okay, that's a good question, Alan. Do you find the length of the videos make a difference in the student understanding? Definitely makes a difference. If you send home a 1-hour video, your students are going to turn off, right? They're not going to watch the full 1 hour, and you can see it. If you use Edpuzzle to do it, you'll see your students kind of drop off. They won't all get through the whole video. They'll be skipping bits. The ideal length of a video for your student, you basically take how old they are, and you want to do 1 minute per how old they are to a maximum of about 15 minutes. Okay, you might get away with a 20-minute video if it's engaging and really cool, but mostly, like if you have a kindy kid, that video can't be longer than 5 minutes. That kid's not going to watch something unless you can make it super engaging, right? But kids TV series shows, they're 5 minutes long for a reason, because the kids want to change after 5 minutes. And even by taking your 1 hour video and chunking it into smaller 5 to 10 minute videos, you'll get a better watch rate. and your students will be more engaged and be learning better by doing that. And so that's something that's really important that we do as teachers, is think through, no one likes to, even as a teacher, I hate sitting in a classroom where someone's just presenting for a whole hour. Like even this presentation I'm giving now, I find frustrating for myself, because I often flip stuff, but it's now been an hour of this webinar, which is mostly me presenting. But we need to think through how we can split things up for our students. It does make a big difference to their level of understanding, because when they get things in shorter chunks, it helps them to see how the chunks then click together as well, and make sure that they're still focused and engaged. Well, I want to thank you all very much for coming along today. And it's been great to run through these 3 secrets and to answer your questions and stuff. Please do feel free to keep leaving comments and on this video and stuff. I'll be happy to come in again later and answer those. And if you were keen on the Flip Learning workshop, this is the workshop. I'll also just quickly grab the link for you guys so that you can go and have a look at it if you want to do that. So I'll do that. Now I'm pretty sure that I actually can't post using this thing. So what I'll do is I'll create a banner that has the link. There we go. There is the link to the workshop. And I'll probably also chuck it up in the group. But I'll chuck that up afterwards. So thank you guys all very much for joining me tonight. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask and I'll be happy to answer them, such as this one. At the end of the day, students do just need to end up with summaries and palm cards. They definitely need a lot more than that. They need to not just have summaries and flashcards. They really need to know how to, if you're just prepping them for a HSC, they need to know how to write answers. They need to know how to break down questions. They need to know a lot more than just memorizing a few bits of content. Okay, you really want to do a lot more than that. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me. If there's no other questions, I will finish this and I'll share a recording of this into the group, and it'll also probably be on YouTube. And I hope that it was beneficial for you all. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, thank you all very much for coming. I hope you have a great night. I'll hopefully see you all soon, maybe in a week or two at the workshop. That'd be really good to see you all there. Maybe I can buy you a drink afterwards. Bye, everyone.